My mom called me like it was nothing. Her voice was cheerful, almost giddy. "We're traveling tomorrow, Ashley. Oh, and by the way, your beach house and your car? They've already been sold." I froze. My chest tightened. She wasn't joking. In one breath, she had erased everything I loved. But what she didn't know is that my dad had planned for this moment years ago. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who should have protected you, hit that like button. Subscribe, because today's story isn't just about revenge, it's about foresight, resilience, and justice. And trust me, the ending will leave you grinning. My name is Ashley, and my life shattered with a single phone call. The sun was sinking low that evening, streaks of orange and purple brushing across the horizon. I was sitting in my small apartment, sipping on lukewarm coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. Her name flashing across the screen didn't usually bring comfort, it brought a knot in my stomach. Still, I answered. "Ashley, we're traveling tomorrow," she said, her voice dripping with cheer, like she'd just won the lottery. "Oh, and by the way, your beach house and your car? They've already been sold." My breath caught. What? My pulse thudded in my ears. I thought maybe I'd misheard. "What do you mean, sold?" My voice came out dry, trembling. She sighed, annoyed, like I was a child too slow to grasp the obvious. "You didn't need them, Ashley. Besides, the money is better used for me and Charles. Europe won't pay for itself, you know." Charles. The boyfriend. The parasite. The man who never missed an opportunity to flaunt a tacky gold watch or lecture me about how young people don't understand investments. He wasn't even in the family picture when Dad was alive. Now he was everywhere, glued to my mother's side like an ugly shadow. I couldn't breathe. The beach house wasn't just a house, it was summers with Dad. Fishing at dawn, barbecue smoke curling into the air, his booming laugh echoing across the water. And the car, my Mustang, wasn't just metal and wheels. It was the memory of him teaching me to drive, steadying my shaking hands on the steering wheel. Now both were gone? "Mom, you had no right," I managed to choke out. "Oh please," she scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. You're young, you'll buy another car someday. As for the lake house, it's just wood and nails. Charles and I need experiences now, while we're alive. Not dusty memories." Her laughter rang out, sharp and hollow, before she hung up. The silence in my apartment pressed down on me like a weight. My hands were trembling, my coffee mug rattling against the table. She had stolen them. She had ripped away the last living pieces of my father, and she didn't even blink. Growing up, it was always like living between two planets. Dad's world was warm, steady, real. He worked hard, valued every dollar, and treated people with quiet dignity. He'd put on old rock records, pour us sodas, and teach me chess on rainy afternoons. Mom's world was different. Cold, glittering, exhausting. She chased luxury like it was oxygen. When I was little, she'd dress me in frilly outfits, drag me to charity events where people smiled with their mouths but never their eyes. She lived for appearances, not moments. Dad once whispered to me on the dock of the lake house, "Your mother thinks happiness is a brand. But remember, Ash, real happiness smells like firewood and lake water." When he died, everything changed. Mom swanned into the funeral wearing a black designer dress that fit more like a runway show than morning attire. People whispered condolences, and she whispered back plans, about selling property, about moving on. I clung to the lake house and Mustang like a lifeline. They weren't just assets, they were anchors. And for years, I guarded them. Until that phone call. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I walked circles around my apartment, replaying her voice, her words, her smugness. Sold. Gone. Erased. My fists clenched until my nails dug into my palms. My throat felt raw, as if I'd swallowed gravel. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to drive to her house, pound on the door, and demand she undo everything. But beneath the anger was something worse, the sinking, crushing weight of helplessness. She was my mother. If she could strip me of these things so easily, what else could she take? I thought of Dad. His smile. His warnings. He'd always been wary of Mom's spending, her greed. Once, when she stormed out after an argument about money, he turned to me and said softly, "Ashley, one day, you'll need to be stronger than her. Stronger than both of us." I didn't understand then. But maybe he knew this day would come. Let me tell you about my mother, so you can feel what I felt that night. She wasn't a monster in the fairy tale sense. No snarling or claws. She was worse, polished, charming, the kind of woman people admired from afar. At dinner parties, she was magnetic. But behind closed doors, she was sharp edges and cutting remarks. When I was 12, I asked her if she liked the painting I'd made at school. She glanced at it once and said, "You're not really an artist, honey. Don't waste time on things you're not good at." I never painted again. When Dad surprised me with the Mustang for my 16th birthday, she rolled her eyes and muttered, "Typical." Encouraging her to be reckless. She always knew how to make joy taste like ash. So, when she sold the house and car, it wasn't just theft, it was the final declaration, "You don't matter. Your memories don't matter. Only I matter." By midnight, I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by old photo albums. Dad and I on the dock, me beaming with a fish almost bigger than my arm. Me behind the Mustang wheel, hair flying, Dad grinning proudly in the passenger seat. I pressed my forehead against the photos, tears dripping onto plastic. My chest ached. My skin prickled. Rage and sorrow fought inside me like fire and ice. And in that storm of grief, a memory flickered, Dad's voice, quiet but firm, the night before his heart attack. "Ashley, I need you to keep this safe. Don't open it until something happens. You'll know when." He had handed me a sealed envelope. I'd tucked it away, unopened, because part of me was too afraid. And now, at rock bottom, I knew. This was the something. My hand shook as I pulled the envelope out of the drawer where I'd hidden it years ago. The paper was yellowed slightly at the edges, as if it had been waiting patiently for me. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the lamp casting long shadows, my breath uneven. For a second, I hesitated. Opening it meant facing whatever truth my father had prepared me for. With trembling fingers, I tore the seal. Inside were neatly stacked legal documents, notarized, signed, official. My eyes darted over the words, confusion twisting into disbelief. Every property. Every account. Every asset, even the ones I didn't know about, had been quietly transferred into an LLC my father had set up. And at the top, my name. I wasn't just an heir. I was the sole owner. A laugh burst out of me, half sob, half gasp. My chest felt tight, but for the first time that day, it wasn't from despair, it was from relief. My father had seen it coming. He'd known what Mom was capable of, and he'd built a wall around me long before she could try to take what wasn't hers. My tears spilled faster, dripping onto the pages as I whispered, "You knew, Dad. You always knew." There was a card tucked into the folder, a business card for a man named Mr. Harris. Attorney at law. My father's handwriting scrawled across the back, "Trust him. Call if needed." I wiped my face, grabbed my phone, and dialed. The line clicked after 2 rings, and a calm voice answered, "Mr. Harris speaking." I introduced myself shakily, stumbling over words, explaining what had just happened. He didn't sound surprised. Instead, there was a quiet assurance in his tone. "Your father prepared everything. Your mother has no authority to sell any of it. Those transactions she tried to make? They're fraudulent. Don't worry, Ashley, we'll fix this." Something inside me snapped back into place. For hours I'd felt powerless, erased, like a child crushed under her mother's heel. But now? Now I had something she didn't expect. Foresight, preparation, and the law on my side. I wasn't going to yell or beg. I was going to let silence and paperwork undo everything she had tried to destroy. The next few days blurred into tense phone calls and quiet strategy sessions. Mr. Harris walked me through every detail. Because the assets were under my LLC, none of the buyers had legal ownership. The car dealership? Refunds were issued, titles reversed. The beach house sale? Void on arrival. Every contract she signed was meaningless. Piece by piece, everything she thought she'd stolen was quietly falling back into my hands. I kept my phone on silent when Mom called again. I imagined her laughing in airport lounges, sipping champagne with Charles, already counting the money she thought she had. She didn't deserve the satisfaction of hearing my voice. She thought I was weak, predictable, still that little girl who hung on every cutting word. But I wasn't going to play her game. I was going to win by refusing to fight on her terms. Each night, as I reviewed documents with Harris, I could feel the shift in myself. My shoulders sat straighter, my hands steadier. Instead of trembling with grief, I felt anchored, almost cold. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. And in that calm came power. My father had given me the tools. Now it was my turn to use them. One evening, Harris asked, "Do you want to confront her right away, or let her find out when she comes back?" I thought about her smug smile, the way she had dismissed me on the phone. She had relished erasing me. No, she didn't deserve a warning. She deserved the shock. "She'll find out when she tries to walk through that door," I told him. He gave a small approving chuckle. "Your father would be proud." The days ticked by. I reclaimed the Mustang first. The sight of it gleaming under the garage lights nearly broke me again. I slid into the driver's seat, running my hand over the wheel, the leather cool beneath my fingers. Dad's voice echoed in my memory, steady, patient, guiding me as a terrified 16-year-old learning to drive. That car wasn't just a machine, it was him, it was me, it was us. And now it was mine again. Next was the beach house. Harris and I visited together, documents in hand. Unlocking that familiar door felt like stepping into a dream. The air smelled faintly of salt and pine, exactly the way it had years ago. My throat tightened as I looked around, the old stone fireplace, the dock stretching out into the glittering water. Every corner whispered of summers with Dad, of safety, of belonging. I stood there for a long time, letting the silence wash over me, grounding myself in the knowledge that no one could take this from me now. Mom's calls became more frequent, more insistent. Voicemails full of her sharp voice, "Ashley, answer me. Did you move my things? Then, Charles and I need access to the house immediately. Call me back." And later, dripping with irritation, "You can't just ignore me. Don't be foolish." I deleted them all without reply. Let her stew. Let her believe she still had control. One night, staring out at the lake from the porch, I realized I wasn't just reclaiming property. I was reclaiming myself. For years, I had lived under her shadow, bending to her moods, shrinking under her criticism. Now, in the quiet strength of my father's foresight, I was free. Her approval no longer mattered. Her voice no longer defined me. The revenge wasn't about screaming or slamming doors, it was about standing tall while she crumbled. I could almost see it already, the look on her face when she stepped off that plane, when she tried to strut into a house that no longer belonged to her, when the car she thought she'd sold purred back into the driveway under my hand. She would finally understand. She would finally be powerless. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to watch her fall. The day finally came when Mom returned. I knew the exact flight, the time, even the smug routine she would follow, walking through arrivals with Charles at her side, designer luggage in tow, a smile plastered on her face like she'd conquered the world. I stayed at the beach house, Mustang parked proudly in the driveway, papers stacked neatly on the counter. It wasn't nerves I felt, but a steady pulse of anticipation. For once, I was the one holding all the cards. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel before I saw her. A luxury rental car pulled up, Charles in his sunglasses behind the wheel, Mom stepping out in a flowing silk scarf and oversized sunglasses. She looked around with the entitlement of someone who believed the world was hers to command. When her eyes landed on me standing on the porch, she gave a bright, brittle smile. "Ashley, darling. I was wondering when you'd stop sulking and come to your senses." I didn't move. "You don't live here, Mom." Her smile faltered for just a second before she replaced it with a laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. This is my house. Where are the keys to the storage unit?" "Charles has some art pieces being delivered later this week." Charles swaggered behind her, adjusting his cufflinks like he belonged here, like he had any claim. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed calm. "You don't own this house. You don't own the car. None of it belongs to you." For the first time, her composure cracked. "What nonsense are you talking about? I sold them myself." I stepped down from the porch slowly, letting the silence stretch between us until even Charles shifted uncomfortably. Then I said, "Every single thing you tried to sell was already mine. Dad made sure of it. The house, the car, the accounts. All of it is under my LLC. Your contracts were invalid. Every sale reversed. You have nothing." Her sunglasses slipped slightly as she blinked at me. Her face paled, and she actually took a step back. "No, that's impossible. Before she could finish, the sound of another car approaching broke the air. Mr. Harris pulled up, got out with his briefcase, and walked calmly to the porch. He opened the folder and placed it on the railing like a judge delivering a verdict. "Everything is legally secured under Ashley's name. Your attempted transactions are void, and any further interference could result in criminal charges." Charles muttered a curse under his breath, eyes darting between us like he'd just realized he'd backed the wrong horse. Mom's lips trembled, her hands clenching around her expensive purse. "You can't do this to me, Ashley. I'm your mother." The words hit me like a stone, but instead of wounding, they steeled me. For years she had used that title like a weapon, as if being my mother gave her the right to take and take until there was nothing left. Now it sounded hollow. I met her eyes and said, "A mother protects. A mother doesn't steal her daughter's life to fund vacations. You gave up that role the second you tried to erase me." The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but the documents spoke louder than anything I could. Harris stood beside me, calm and unwavering. Charles cleared his throat, muttered something about needing air, and walked back to the car, leaving her standing alone. Her voice finally cracked, the polished confidence slipping into something raw and desperate. "You think this makes you strong? You think he loved you more than me?" Her hand shook as she pointed at me. "He betrayed me. You're just his pawn." I took a deep breath, forcing the sting of her words away. "No, Mom. He trusted me because he knew who you really were. He knew you'd try this, and he made sure I wouldn't be destroyed by it. He didn't betray you, you did that all on your own." Her eyes glistened, but I couldn't tell if it was anger or the faintest trace of tears. Without another word, she turned sharply on her heel and marched back to the car. Charles didn't even look at her as she slid into the seat. They drove off, the tires spitting gravel, the rental disappearing down the road. I stood there for a long time after, the lake shimmering in the distance, the breeze carrying the scent of pine. My chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small in her presence. I didn't feel powerless. I felt whole. When I finally walked back inside, the paper still lay neatly on the counter. Harris gave me a small nod, as though to say, "It's over." But I knew it wasn't just over, it was a new beginning. The silence after they left was deafening, but it wasn't the kind that haunted me anymore. It was peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of her presence pressing down on me. Still, a part of me knew it wasn't the end. Mom had never been one to accept defeat quietly. It didn't take long for the cracks in her glamorous fantasy to show. Charles disappeared almost overnight. I heard through distant relatives that he'd left her stranded in a hotel lobby, luggage piled beside her while he walked out with another woman. Apparently, the free-flowing money he'd counted on wasn't there, and with his meal ticket gone, so was his affection. Mom called me once after that. Her voice wasn't sharp this time, it was raw, shaky. Ashley, I just need some help. A place to stay, maybe just until I get back on my feet. There was no arrogance left, no laughter, no smugness. For a moment, my heart ached. She was still my mother, no matter how much pain she had caused. But then I remembered the sound of her voice when she told me she'd sold the house, the car, everything I loved. I remembered the hollowness in my chest as she laughed about it. And the ache hardened into something else, clarity. I can't do that, Mom, I said softly. There was silence, then a sharp inhale on the other end, as if she was about to lash out. But the words never came. She hung up, and that was the last time I heard her voice. Meanwhile, my life slowly became my own again. Driving the Mustang along the coast with the windows down, I felt like a teenager with my dad beside me once more, wind whipping through my hair, the road wide open. Nights at the beach house brought comfort too. I'd sit on the porch, looking at the rippling water under the moonlight, whispering to the quiet, I did it, Dad. You gave me the tools, and I made sure she couldn't take it away. The house wasn't just wood and stone. It was resilience. It was love. It was proof that preparation could outmatch manipulation, that foresight could silence even the cruelest betrayal. Mom faded into whispers. Someone said she was staying with a distant cousin, another claimed she was selling jewelry to cover debts. Wherever she was, it didn't matter. For once, her chaos didn't touch me. The life she tried to dismantle stood strong, not because I fought louder than her, but because my father had made sure her greed could never win. And in that truth, I found peace. Weeks turned into months, and the storm that had once consumed me settled into calm waters. The lake house became my refuge again, not a battleground. I repainted the porch rails, fixed the squeaky door hinge Dad used to complain about, and planted fresh flowers by the steps. Every change felt like reclaiming not just the property, but myself. One late afternoon, I took the Mustang for a drive. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky with gold. As I pulled into town, I caught sight of her. My mother stood outside a bus station, suitcase at her feet, shoulders hunched. She wore the same silk scarf from her trip, but it looked tired now, limp and faded. Her hair was messy, her face hollow, and beside her was no Charles, no entourage, no shine. Just her. Alone. For a moment, she looked up and our eyes met across the street. Her lips parted slightly, as if she might call out, but she didn't. And I didn't stop. The Mustang's engine purred as I drove past, steady and unyielding. That image burned into me, not as triumph, but as proof. She had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Back at the lake house, I stood by the water, holding the framed photo of Dad I kept on the mantel. His smile, frozen in time, still carried warmth. You knew, I whispered, my voice catching. You knew she'd try to take it all. And you trusted me to be strong enough. A tear slipped down my cheek, but it wasn't grief this time. It was gratitude. Gratitude for his foresight, his love, his quiet way of protecting me even when he wasn't here anymore. I realized then that revenge hadn't been about punishing her, it had been about honoring him. She lost everything because of her greed, but I gained something she never could touch, peace. My father's legacy wasn't money or property. It was resilience. It was the reminder that I was worth protecting, that I had the strength to carry his wisdom forward. As the sun sank behind the trees, I felt the weight of years of pain lifting. The girl who once trembled under her mother's words was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, steadier, unshaken. My mother's downfall wasn't a spectacle, it wasn't loud, but it was complete. And my victory wasn't in watching her crumble, but in knowing that her power over me was gone forever. I walked back to the porch, Mustang keys jingling in my hand, the lake glistening behind me. Justice had been served, not through fury, but through silence, strength, and the wisdom of a father who had loved me enough to prepare for the storm. And in that quiet, I smiled. Some betrayals come like storms, loud, destructive, impossible to ignore. Others come in silence, wrapped in the voice of someone you should have been able to trust. For Ashley, the betrayal wasn't just about a house or a car. It was about a mother who tried to erase her from her own history, a woman who valued luxury over love, appearances over truth. But the beauty of this story lies not in anger, but in foresight. Ashley's father had seen the storm coming long before she did. He prepared for it, quietly, patiently, leaving her with not just property, but protection. And in that protection, Ashley discovered her strength. She didn't have to scream or beg, she didn't have to fight her mother with fire. She simply stood her ground with the law, with preparation, with calm. Her revenge wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was silent, unshakable, and devastatingly complete. Her mother lost everything she had tried to steal, not because Ashley destroyed her, but because greed has a way of destroying itself. And through it all, Ashley honored her father's wisdom. The lake house remained hers, the Mustang roared again under her hands, and the legacy of love outlasted the legacy of manipulation. That is the true justice here, not the fall of her mother, but the rise of a daughter who finally saw her own worth. So, if you've ever felt powerless in the face of betrayal, remember Ashley's story. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fury, it's preparation, silence, and the quiet strength of knowing who you are and what you deserve. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever seen someone's greed backfire this spectacularly? We'd love to hear your take. And of course, make sure you're subscribed, because more stories of betrayal, justice, and sweet revenge are coming your way every week. Until then, stay strong, protect what's yours, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply living free of the people who tried to break you.